Hello and welcome to the She Reads Romance Books podcast, the ultimate show for romance book lovers looking for the best books worth reading. I'm your host, Leslie Murphy, and in each short episode, I share my favorite book list of recommendations so you know exactly what to add to your must-read list. Join me as I explore the romance genre and have fun collecting book boyfriends along the way, because life is better with a love story. Hello, readers. I am so excited for you to join me in this episode where I chat with the one and only Abby Millsaps with a special announcement on how you can get a free book courtesy of Abby. But first, I want to tell you about another reverse harem romance. In a universe where treaties are crucial, Angel, a genetically engineered beacon of perfection, stands at the crossroads of love and duty, bound by fate to three men to unite their planets. Hiding in plain sight on Earth, her world shatters when her childhood love Mikey abandons their preordained path. As forbidden passion ignites with the dangerously alluring Greg, Angel finds herself caught in a high-stakes battle between destiny and desire. Will she uphold the legacy crafted by the Alliance and King Brian, or dare to redefine her own future and reshape entire galaxies? Discover a tale of love, sacrifice, and rebellion where one girl's choice could alter the fate of the universe. Check out Angel by Tina Wortman. Okay, welcome readers to the She Reads Romance Books podcast. I am so delighted to have a very special guest joining me today who has just completed her latest Why Choose Romance series, Boys of South Chapel, that you are absolutely going to love. We are going to talk all about the series and how you can get your hands on the first book for free. So I'm so excited to welcome to the show, Abby Millsaps. How are you?
Hi, Leslie. I'm great. Thank you for having me.
Yay! I was so excited when I knew we were going to have this chat. But first, congrats on completing this amazing series, Boys of South Chapel, as I said. So book 4, right? So just released earlier this year. But it all starts with book 1, So Wrong, which let me just go ahead and break the ice and tell readers that you are so graciously gifting to members of the She Reads Romance Books book club a free ebook copy of this month. Thank you so much. It's awesome. And so I know everyone's just going to want to get their hands on it and know all about it. So let's just dive in. And if you wouldn't mind just giving us a little tidbit of like, what is the series about and what is so wrong about? Give us a little taste.
Okay. So Wrong is book 1 of the Boys of South Chapel series. It is a second chance Why Choose Romance series. We're going to meet our female main character, Hunter. She is just graduating high school, and some of the flashbacks that we experience in this series, fresh out of high school, and just feels like she has so many opportunities and is so excited about her future. In the present timeline, though, you're going to see a very different version of Hunter. So this story is told in flashbacks. It's now and then timeline. You get to see a little bit of, the past and how Hunter, what she goes through and experiences this first summer before college. And then in the present timeline, she is a different person, really. She is more experienced. She's probably a little more jaded, but she is unexpectedly back in her hometown. She's back in South Chapel. And just by circumstances, she is living in her stepfather's house. That means that the person she's a roommate with, her roommate is actually a guy named Greedy, who is not her brother, but he was her first love. And so very early and So Wrong, we see some tension there. My goodness, it's really complicated. It's really heavy for both of them. But early on in So Wrong, there's a blast from the past. So their mutual friend Levi is unexpectedly back in town and asking for both of them. And so they are going to go to him and see what he needs, see what they can do for him. And things kick off from there.
Wow. Oh my gosh. That's such a teaser to be like, I want to know all about these people and what happened. But I have to, I want to start with, so why choose, right? And you've written another Why Choose series before this one.
Yeah.
But what is it about this category that you love so much and decided like, "Yep, I'm gonna put my stamp in it and we're gonna go with it?"
Oh, I love that question. So to me, why choose is such a beautiful challenge. And I love a good challenge. That's who I am at my core. Like give
Love it.
me, let's make it hard. Let's see how how complicated we can make things. I loved the idea that there can be more than one soulmate for a person. And that with really great communication and through definitely some trial and error and figuring things out, but there can be this beautiful version of happily ever after that can embrace polyamory. And, that's what we really see. Hunter is, oh, she's such a fabulous character because she really goes through it in this series and she really kind of needs each one of the men that she meets along this journey of like self discovery and self actualization. So,
I love that, and I think that's sort of why it's having its heyday, why choose, because each character does sort of bring out a little something different in the main heroine, or character
yeah,
that, it's kinda hard to, like, build up to one person's gonna check all the boxes for
yeah,
somebody, but
yes.
yet having these different loves, they all can fulfill a different need. Yeah, I love
Yeah.
that.
And it's so fun to me to play with different tropes within the individual relationship arcs. So we in So Wrong, we see some fake dating, we see some second chance,
Mm,
we see a bit of like enemies and like not on good terms anymore. And I
mhm,
also love that there's something really comforting to me about writing Why Choose Romance because oftentimes, at least nowadays, I think people will say like, "Oh, I don't know if I can handle a third act breakup," or "I don't know if I can handle the stress of that happening in a romance novel," and yet that's sometimes really important to the story. I
mhm.
love that in Why Choose, I can give you the angst. We can have these really low moments or these really tense moments or these really hard moments for these characters, but then our female main character has others she can rely on through that.
Yes, yes, absolutely. And I love how you say you can throw in a bunch of different tropes with all the pairings in a way, right? And I love that this one's fake dating. It's one of my favorite tropes, as is enemies to lovers. But do you love that? Do you have like specific ones that you absolutely love, or did they just sort of come to you as you're writing the story that you're like, this is going to be their shtick together or whatever?
My all-time favorite trope is second chance romance. And so you see that throughout the whole series. I don't think anyone will be surprised by that. But I did really want to explore. I had never written fake dating before. And so by putting it in So Wrong, I loved the opportunity to play around with that. And it just
Hmm.
really worked for the story. It just was such a good fit because they were two characters who had previously been friends. And when you read those flashback chapters between Hunter and Levi, now and then there's a little something between them,
Hmm.
but she's Greedy's girl. So it was very much off limits and they both respected those boundaries. So I
Right.
liked that this was a way for them to sort of try it on and see what would it be like if we were actually together. And then, like every great fake dating trope, it very quickly not so fake anymore.
So fake. Yes, exactly. Well, and I think I love that about the book, how it alternates between the past and present because it sort of gives context to the characters where they currently are in the story, right? Without sort of like force feeding it here at the beginning to give that context, right? But you can sort of tease that in as it's needed. But that's kind of hard to do. But I really love books that do that, that capture you in the moment, but yet keep feeding you stuff that you're like, oh, now I get it. Or, ooh, that happened. Yeah. Because
Yes.
something
It's
did
like,
happen, right? And we don't know
yeah.
that yet.
It's like once you see this full picture by the end of the book, you're like, "Oh my goodness." So once you see the full picture and the way the past and the present converge, it's a big moment. It's a really significant moment for every character on the page.
And they are football players, is that correct? Did I read that
Yeah.
these are
So yeah, Grady is the quarterback for the South Chapel Sharks. And Levi had gone out to school in California, but he was a tight end at his school. So because, you find out really early in the book that he had to come home back to North Carolina for an emergency surgery. And that's really part of the story, but it is still part of his identity. And it
gotcha.
continues to play out throughout the series as he tries to discover what's he going to do now? And what does he want out of life now that this one dream maybe isn't what's going to work for him anymore?
Gotcha. So let's talk about them, the main heroes. You've already sort of given us a little bit of a picture of what to expect from them, but what do you think readers are going to really love about them and why they'll be their next favorite book boyfriends?
Okay. So, well, we have hashtags for them. Okay. We're either needy for greedy or he's
Oh,
hashtag my guy Levi. Okay. So, Levi is an incredible character because he's a Southern gentleman through and through. He does have some golden retriever energy about him, and
okay.
yet he also is just very much he's open. He's open, he's willing. He is just really happy to show up for the people he loves. And I love seeing that in a character and in a
Mhm.
romance story where he's just like,
Yeah.
yes, he isn't stuck in any certain romantic wound. He's had experiences, but he hasn't let those completely define him. So I think there's something really beautiful and hopeful about Levi.
Mhm.
He's inventive. There is a scene in this book where he has to go a little creative to please Hunter, and I just love it for him. I'm so proud of him. I'm like, you go, Levi.
Big pat on the back, Levi. Great job. Yes.
A pat on the forearm, if you will.
Even better.
Okay, so Greedy, on the other hand, Greedy is more serious. He is he was hopelessly devoted to Hunter when they first met. That was his first love, his first everything. He now has sort of been cast aside and has to play this role of pretending he doesn't care as much as he really does. But
Mhm.
oh my gosh, you can just feel his longing and his devotion to her. There is
Mhm.
a scene in this book where I don't wanna give it away, but you really get a sense of his absolute singular devotion to Hunter, and I just love that, like, he is so
Yes.
down bad for her,
Right.
and it was only ever her, and in his mind, in this book, it's only ever going to be her.
Oh my gosh. I think devotion from him and then emotional intelligence. I mean, you can't go wrong with those two then, right? Like and they're this is sort of like young adult, new adult romance because it takes
Yeah, I would say it's probably more I would not categorize it young adult, it
yeah, yeah.
gets once we get some of our other guys in the series. New adult for sure, but we do have some more mature characters that enter the picture as the series continues. So, I think
Yeah.
this one, because we do have those high school flashbacks too, it does read definitely more new adult, but as far as where the storyline is gonna go and how we sort of travel with Hunter through her journey, through
Mhm.
what she endured between, like, the summer, when we're looking at this book, the flashbacks are from the summer before college starts, but the present time is 3 years later. And so we get to
Yeah.
see that entire
Wow.
3-year timeline and how she evolves and changes and what happens along the way.
Gotcha. So that was gonna be my next question about her. Like as the heroine of the story, I mean, other than people being completely jealous of her, but with these two mega heroes, what do you think readers will love most about her?
So Hunter is very self-aware, and in the present timeline, she knows who she is, she knows what her limits are, she knows what she needs, and I just love that. She's really confident in who she is and what she wants.
Mhm.
And one of the things that there's no diagnosis on page, it's not highlighted a ton, but she has low moments and she has darker times. And so Hunter as a character, she has premenstrual dysphoric disorder, which is PMDD.
Mhm.
And you don't really you don't get a really strong sense of that in this first book, but you will see that she'll have a few days where she just is a shut-in. She does not talk to anybody, she's not going anywhere, and it affects her relationships, especially those who don't understand what she's going
Understand it.
through. So I think
Mhm.
for any reader who's ever experienced a low moment or a time where they just weren't 100% themselves, I
Mhm.
think her character will really resonate. And I think the thing I love most about Hunter is that despite having those really low lows, she always bounces back. And
Yeah.
she's not willing to let that define her. She's going to, take her meds, claim her crown, and get back up there when she has the ability to do so.
Yeah. So even if it's not mentioned on page, like, she knows, like, she has a diagnosis, or she, like, struggling, like, "Why am I feeling this way?" kind of a thing?
So in the now timeline, she already has her diagnosis. Later in the series, it comes on page. In the flashbacks, there's little hints throughout, but
Awesome.
I think there's a interesting parallel between when we think about like women's health and like what kind of healthcare is somebody getting at 18, and there's
Right.
a has to be kind of this convergence of mental health and women's health that happens, especially for certain diagnoses like PMDD. So
Yeah.
I think that is one of the challenges, and it's something that she has to survive and then overcome and endure as the series goes on.
Well, that was gonna be one of my questions, because I love how you pride yourself in writing authentic characters while weaving in mental health, chronic illness, neurodiverse representation, like, all the things. Why is that important to you in your writing?
That is it feels like it is the pillar of my work and why I'm here doing this. I want a reader to see themselves in these stories. It's
Mhm.
so fun to write swoony characters and witty banter and super great spicy scenes. But at the end of the day, I just want a reader to feel seen. And if they've gone through life or just exist in a way that a lot of people, it may be in their real life or in the real world, don't recognize. My favorite thing about romance as a genre is it's so hopeful. So getting to tell authentic stories, but also stories where marginalized characters are getting their happily ever after. Like, oh,
Mhm.
I've goosebumps right now.
Yes.
Like, that's what it's about for me.
Yes, exactly. I love that. Well, and I think that you have such a purpose to it in doing that. I'm sure that's reflected in the writing, and I love that that's sort of a passion for you. Back to the story real quick. So right, you just mentioned, just came out in January this year, book 4, final books in the series. Gosh. Without giving any spoilers, what can readers sort of expect to uncover as the series sort of unfolds into book 2, 3, and 4?
Absolutely. Okay, let's go on a journey because that's
Okay.
what Hunter does. She goes on a journey. So, in book 2 of this series, book 1 is So Wrong. That's the one we're talking about and featuring. Book 2 is called So Real.
Okay.
That story finds Hunter in London, and she is trying to just put the past behind her and run away from some of the really big, scary, hard things that have happened and just move on with her life. She's not super successful because if you've ever, dealt with something, in an unhealthy way, it doesn't just go away.
Mm.
So she meets in the past tense of the book, in the then chapters, she meets a British billionaire named Kabir Spencer.
Right.
And oh my gosh, there's this scene where she works at the nightclub he owns. And there's a scene where she is there with her best friend and they're just dancing. It's their night off. They're having a great time. It's like one of the hottest nightclubs in London. They're having so much fun on the dance floor. And Fence shows up and he's there and he starts dancing with her. And she's like, I'm allowed to be here. Like, I'm not working. Like, this isn't, don't get me in trouble. And
Right.
he's like, there's nothing wrong with what's happening here. And she's like, well, I work for you. You're my boss. And he said, I'm selling this club. And she says, what? Wait, what? And now she's panicking. She's like, I'm not going to have a job. Like, what's the new ownership? He goes, if us dancing right now isn't allowed because I'm the owner, I will sell this club.
Wow. Oh my
Okay,
gosh.
well, he'll do everything you need to know about Spence. He continues
Sold.
to be
Yeah.
that level of intense throughout the whole series. But aside from the really fun, swoony moments, Hunter also, her past kind of catches up with her and some of the things she's been bearing down and not letting herself process come to a head. So there's a lot of content warnings for So Real because there's some on-page situations that just readers need to be aware of.
Okay.
In the beginning of the content warnings, it specifically tells you what chapters they occur in and more details for anybody who needs that, because I always want readers to prioritize their mental health.
Mhm.
But she kind of has this whole experience in London that changes her fundamentally, changes how she views herself, how she approaches life, and just really sort of, she grows and she grows in a way. I always say you can't spell grow without grr and ow. It's painful. She's going through it. So
Yes. Oh my
real.
god. I love
It
that.
is probably well, I don't want to say it's the darkest, but it just is a really intense read. Let's
Okay.
move on to book 3.
Okay.
But I'm only talking about the past tense because I don't want to give away
Yeah, no, these are all
happened, but I
like,
will
oh
tell
my
you that
gosh, I need to read them all. Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
Does show up in the now timeline right at the end of So Wrong.
Okay.
And then he is on the page throughout all of So Real. He's not going anywhere. Yeah, no, he's not going anywhere, much to Greedy's chagrin.
I can
Oh,
imagine. Hmm.
in So Rare, that is book 3 of the series. In that, we find Hunter has left London, and you find out why. And it's nothing bad, but she just feels like she could really kind of get stuck there and stay there forever if she doesn't push herself. She was supposed to be doing this whole kind of eat, pray, love self discovery tour. And she's like, I can't just be stuck here forever. And so she heads off. She doesn't know where to go. And I love this about Hunter because this is exactly how my brain would work too. She's like, where else can I go in Europe? She's like, oh, Lake Como. I that's a famous place people go. I'm gonna go
Yeah.
there. So she arrives and she's staying in this hostel, and it is not a good situation. And she's desperate for a job. And so she goes and starts working for this couple who own these little sets of villas, and that is where she meets Sione, who is their grandson. Sione is, oh my gosh, he's so swoony. He is really, really sensual. He's into cycles of the moon and yoga and Reiki and this really kind of calm, spiritual, sensual presence. And he's an amazing character. I love him. He identifies as demisexual. And so that means that like Hunter right away is like, oh, hey, because he's, woo. But he doesn't have any sort of insta love or insta attraction. That's not accessible to him. So over time, over the course of about a year and a half, he establishes that really deep emotional connection to Hunter.
Hmm.
Then the physical part kind of starts to develop for them. So I love that he's a character that sort of guided Hunter through like how do you make peace with everything that's happened? And how do you
Hmm.
move forward knowing that, at this point she has this diagnosis for PMDD? How do you move forward knowing that this is something you always will have to live with?
Right.
So there's some really beautiful scenes between Hunter and Sione in that book. And
Wow.
then it's So Rare in the now timeline. Oh, look, Sione is on the page too. So 1, 2, 3, you get new character throughout. And then in book 4, the final book of the series, So Right, everything is told in the present tense and all 5 characters are on the page and everybody's here. Like the gang's all
Wow.
here.
I love that. And it seems like too in book 3, like very different characteristics to Spence that you got in book 2.
Yeah, absolutely. He
Yeah.
is, I mean, they're very much foil characters in a lot of ways. But once we get Sione into the fold, it was a risk introducing, having people fall in love with Greedy and Levi in book 1, and then bringing Spence into the picture for book 2, and then being like, wait, 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 there's one more. I had a lot of people tell me they were nervous about Sione showing up on page. But once you see how he sort of integrates into the group, and
Mhm.
then there's some really beautiful moments where he provides just a lot of different kinds of support for Greedy and for Spence especially. Like
Mm.
the way this group comes together in the end is just so beautiful.
Yeah, and I mean, it totally hooked me, but I feel like because I don't think I've read a Chu series where it sort of adds to that through each book, where normally it's sort of like, here's the crew, and
Mhm.
then how does it sort of work its way together? So I really love that about this series, how you formulate units, but then, oh no, wait, now we're meeting somebody else and helping her through this journey where she is then, and then till you get to book 4. That's incredible.
I did have to assure a lot of people, I'm like, okay, this is it. I promise. No one else is coming. No one else is showing up unexpectedly.
Oh my gosh, that's too funny. Well, just a reminder then to listeners that if you are totally ready, like me, to dive into Voice of Cells Chapel, then you're going to want to join the She Reads Romance Books Book Club this month because So Wrong is our March 2025 free book of the month. And Abby, as I said, was so grateful. We're so grateful for your generosity. It was awesome. But I'd love to learn more about your writing. Like I said, I loved that piece how mental health representation is so important to you, but sort of like, let's go back to the beginning in a way. Like, how did you know you even wanted to be in author, or how did your career get started?
Oh, I love this question.
Well,
So I mean, I think my whole life, as far back as I can think, when the question was asked, what do you want to be when you grow up? I wanted to be a writer. Now, that is not a practical career, especially if you're like a first generation college grad for your family. So it always was something I wanted to do. It's something I loved doing. I was, in middle school, I was writing fan fiction.
wow.
There was a eighth grade competition. It was called Power of the Pen. Almost think like mathletes, but for
Okay.
writing. Okay.
Yeah.
I was disqualified from going to the state championships. I was the only person on my whole team disqualified from state championships because the judges said my writing was too predictable and always ended in happily ever after.
Who are these judges?
Well, hello, that's genre convention. So,
Right. Oh, wow. Oh my gosh. So
but so I
proud of
always was
you. Yeah.
something. Like, it feels like a purpose and a passion for me. But I went to college. I got a degree in public relations and gender studies. And I went and I worked several different jobs. I worked a lot in marketing in the communication space. I did a lot of events and worked at the rec center of a big state school in Ohio with marketing. So I've had all these different experiences that sort of led me to this point. And
Mhm.
then during the pandemic, I think a lot of people probably can point to and say like that was a game changer because I'm reevaluating and trying to figure out like what does this all mean? My
Right.
oldest daughter was in kindergarten during the pandemic and it was all virtual for the whole year. So if you've ever seen virtual learning, I mean a kindergartner not even use the mouse. So I also was in virtual kindergarten that year.
Yes, you were.
We
Mhm.
had this phenomenal teacher who would make everybody say these mantras. And so for all the fall semester for kindergarten, they would have to say, I am a reader. I am a reader. And then the new year started and it was early January 2022. And now the unit has switched. And now the mantra is, I am a writer. I am a writer. All these 5 year olds chanting this. And I'm like,
What?
you know what? I am a writer. So that week I started just writing for fun, writing for myself. I didn't really know much about indie publishing. I didn't know much about anything. Because the book is written in third person and includes the cheating trope. So to tell you, I really did not know what I was doing.
But this was
But
only 3 years ago. 3 years ago.
yeah, yeah. But I wrote that book for me and learned a lot along the way and went from there.
Wow, that's incredible. I'm impressed and beyond impressed, actually, that it's been less than 3 years and that it's one thing to, like, put words to paper, right? But then a whole 'nother beast to learn, like you said, how to self-publish it and then to keep it going, and, I mean, wow, that's awesome. Has it sort of been all that you hoped for, or is it sort of like, now that a passion has sort of become a job, it's sort of different, or
No, it's still, oh my gosh, it's beyond anything I ever hoped for. I mean,
Oh,
this is the dream to get to do the thing I love doing and also support my family doing that. Like that,
yeah.
it's the dream.
That's awesome. Well, you're also best known for writing unapologetically angsty romance that I think you say quotes causes emotional damage for your readers. Cue the
I have been known to say
music,
that, yes.
right? Yeah. So why do you put your readers through that, Abby? Like, I gotta know. What?
I think the reason I do it and the reason I love it is because when we are in the romance genre, there's a guaranteed happily ever after. And so if
Mhm.
there's ever a time to really like put somebody through it or
Yeah.
to play with the emotions or to explore the depths of different situations or hard moments or complicated, complex, just the nature of being a human, I feel like romance is this safe space to do it in.
Yes.
Knowing that no matter how much it hurts on page 200, like it will be okay in the end. And I really pride myself on like, I will give you the most satisfying HEA of all time. I also will give you one, two, three, four, five epilogues. The series has five epilogues to it.
Right.
So I think I don't know. I like to approach life as like, we are humans here having an experience and I want to feel it all. So
Yeah.
creating this kind of safe place where you can feel things and it is okay to break down and maybe have a cathartic moment between the pages of a book. I think that's beautiful.
Absolutely. And you're right. I don't think anyone's put it into words like that, but that's absolutely right because that happily ever after does give you that safety, as you said, to really take the time to explore and to push or to learn, knowing that you have that coming, which is, I mean, yeah, that's why I read it too. I love it. Oh, well, what do you have coming out next? Tell us what you're working on these days,
Oh my goodness. Okay,
or
so
can you tell us a little?
I can give you a little teasers, some little
Yeah.
hints
Okay.
and teasers.
Okay.
So I have arrived in my Why Choose era and I am building my house here. This is my favorite thing to do. This
But
is my genre. I love it so much. So my next series will be another Why Choose romance. It will be set in Ohio, like Northeast Ohio. It'll be a college town that also has this apple orchard right near the town. So think like fall vibes and we have a really interesting group of characters this time around because our FMC came to school as a graduate assistant, and she came to school with her brother and his best friend, who are there on hockey scholarships. And then she kicks things off with the professor that she is supposed to be the graduate assistant for. And his best
okay.
friend happens to be this kind of Luke Danes coded, really grumpy apple orchard owner.
Okay.
So, between that grouping of characters, the brother's best friend, the professor, and the grumpy apple orchard owner,
Oh,
things are going to evolve. And
I
when I
love
tell
it.
you, you kind of already called me out on this, Leslie. You said, like, I've never read a White Shoes where we're just like adding guys. I love to challenge myself. So, for this series in particular, the thing I can tell you that has been the most difficult for me as a writer is the fact that these men hate each other, absolutely loathe each other.
Oh, that's gonna be interesting.
So I know we love like, oh, enemies to lovers. Okay, but what if like the actual group is all at odds
Yes.
against each other all the time?
Wow. So do you then like when you're doing a new series, do you like plot it all out? Like, are you a plotter or do you like, well, I'm starting with this and we'll see who sort of wants to make an appearance as we get down the line or you're
I'm a loose plotter. Like I like to keep it flexible. I like to leave enough room that the story and the characters can guide me. But I
Mhm.
always, before I start any series, I always figure out the cliffhangers for the books
Oh,
and the
okay.
nicknames that everybody's going to call each other because that's my favorite thing.
Oh, I
You know,
love
and
that.
so wrong. Everybody, there's these different nicknames, and he calls her this, she calls him that. Like that's my favorite. So
Nice.
that's the must.
I've always thought I need to do a book list of really fun, like books with great nicknames. So I'm gonna remember your books for when I do that because that'll be perfect. Awesome.
Oh. I
Gosh.
mean, I wouldn't even argue that Greedy's nickname for Hunter is that good. It's just unique.
But the fact that they have them, I think it's great.
Yes, fair, fair,
Yes.
absolutely.
Well, I also want to say that all of your books for readers to know are available to read in Kindle Unlimited. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct. Everything.
I think that's awesome, but give me like the inside scoop. Like, do authors get a fair shake with that subscription service? Because I love that you can pay one fee and then like I can go and now I'm gonna go binge read all of Abby's books on Kindle Unlimited.
Yes.
Is that pay you well? Is it good for you?
Yes, yes. The
Okay.
KU model, every author it's going to be different. But because of what I write, I'm writing romance, I'm writing Why Choose, and I am writing in series. And
Hmm.
so it is very unlikely that somebody, I mean, perhaps, but most of the time, people are going to get into book one and then they are just going to want to fly through it. And the way
Yeah.
KU works, it pays you based on the pages read. And
Okay.
so knowing that if somebody is like, yes, I'm really excited about this new book. I just read So Wrong. My gosh, I don't know the total pages between all the books. I've got to think it's close to 1,000 pages. That's a
Wow.
significant chunk. And
Yes.
there's no limit to the earning potential in Kindle Unlimited. And
Right.
I love that it feels like it's a great deal to the reader as well. It's a really nice, and it really, I mean, the more you read, the more value you get out of it. So from our perspective, that's mutually beneficial.
Yes, good. Well, and that's exactly right. When you know you're starting or checking out book one in the series, to know that you can just, as you said, fly through it when you fall in love with them from the beginning, it's like, oh, this is golden. Like, check me out for the weekend. Like, I'm in
Yes.
it.
I sort of love the idea too. Like once a series is complete, knowing you've got the whole thing picked out, you don't have to worry like, what am I going to read next? Like, oh, you've got it right there. It's queued up and ready to go.
Yes. Exactly, exactly. Okay, well, that's good to know. That makes me feel better about continuing my subscription and taking full advantage with all of your work. But so I want to say again, thank you for gifting members of the She Reads Romance Books Book Club a free copy of So Wrong. But before we go, I'd love to ask a few more questions just about Abby, the reader. And we've talked a little bit about that, but if you have time, but can you first tell listeners if there's anything you want to know us to know about the series we haven't covered, or where we can find you online so that we can follow your work?
Oh, absolutely. Okay, so on Instagram, I'm at Abby Millsaps. You'll find me there pretty much every day of the week. I also have a Facebook reader group that is really active and that I love spending time with them. That is called Abby's Full Out Fiends. But if you look up Abby Millsaps reader group, that should pop up over on Facebook. And then
Awesome.
I also have a Patreon membership. Patreon is more access to behind the scenes content. You can see all the NSFW artwork that I commission for the books. There's lots of fun goodies there, and they typically will see like early announcements and early teasers of my works in progress as well. So searching Abby Millsaps on Patreon, those are kind of all the best places. Oh, and obviously my website, I'm sorry, www.authorabbymillsaps.com. That has a reading order for my books. It has the playlist for every book, which is really
Ooh,
fun if you want like that
yeah.
immersive reading experience. It has the
Mhm.
tropes. It also has a content warning for everything. And then it gives you the direct links. So here it is on Amazon. Here it is the audiobook. Everything is kind of laid out really nicely there.
And there you have it, folks. I know that you are now going to be joining Kindle Unlimited and going down that rabbit hole of Abby Millsap's amazing reverse harem series, Boys of South Chapel. But if you would like to kick it off with a free book, the first book in the series, then be sure to join the She Reads Romance Books Book Club this March, and you will gain access to that first book for free just as a member. Thank you so much for tuning into the podcast. As always, I so appreciate it. If you have not yet reviewed it, if you wouldn't mind taking a minute, going to your favorite podcast platform or Apple Podcasts and just sharing me a little love with a review, I would so appreciate it. And then be sure to tune in next time for the next episode. In the meantime, happy reading, because life is better with a love story. That's all for this episode of the She Reads Romance Books podcast. I hope you enjoyed it and found some new books to add to your TBR list. If you did, please subscribe, rate, and review the show on your favorite podcast app. It really helps me reach more romance book lovers like you, and I appreciate your support. If you're a book boyfriend collector like me, then you'll want to join my email list so you never miss a podcast episode or a new book list. Just visit shereadsromancebooks.com/join and sign up today. As a thank you, I'll instantly send you my list of top 10 book boyfriends that will make you swoon. Trust me, you don't want to miss this list. Thank you for listening, and until next time, happy reading.